On July 7, 1893, a crowd of over 5,000 white people lynched a black man named Seay J. Miller in Bardwell, Kentucky, for allegedly killing Mary and Ruby Ray, two white girls, despite all evidence pointing towards his innocence. Statements from Miller's wife and other witnesses indicated that Miller was not even in Kentucky on the date the girls were killed, and multiple eyewitnesses identified the Ray girls' killer as a white man. Even John Ray, the girl's father, was unconvinced of Miller's guilt. Frank Gordon, who was the sole witness who implicated Miller, he originally actually told police that the person he saw was a white man, as did many other witnesses. Gordon only changed his statement when the county sheriff threatened to charge him as an accomplice if he did not do so. This same sheriff also handed Miller over to a crowd of thousands of white citizens to be lynched. The mob was determined to ensure Miller's death was brutal, reasoning that immediate lynching by rope would be too humane. The white mob fastened a chain weighing over 100 pounds around Miller's neck and forced him to walk through town until he fainted from exhaustion. Miller's last words were, and I quote, "I am standing here an innocent man among excited men who do not propose to let the law take its course. I have committed no crime to be deprived of my liberty or life. I am not guilty. Burning and torture here lasts but a little while, but if I die with the lie on my soul, I shall be tortured forever. I am innocent." Unquote. Around 3:30, the mob hanged Miller from a telephone pole, shot hundreds of bullets into his body, and left his corpse hanging from the pole for hours, shooing away any black person that tried to take it down. Afterwards, these same whites cut off his fingers, toes, ears, and other body parts as souvenirs, and then burned his body in a public fire.
All right, Shalom. We are the Hebrew Israelites from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone. We're here to give all praises, glory, and honor to
Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakakwadash.
Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and our fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth that be like it to the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.
All right, we're back again with another installment of our camp series called For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob. And before we get into it, I just want to declare fair use, according to the Copyright Act of 1976, as stipulated under Section 107. Okay, this video is not for monetary gain. It is strictly for the purposes of education, and likewise those stipulations in Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. All right, on the screen you see our topic for today. It is from the EJI, A History of Racial Injustice. We'll put a link to this article in the description box. And the title is 5,000 White People Torture, Mutilate, and Lynch Black Man in Kentucky. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get the opening scripture, Obadiah 1 and 10.
It's the book of Obadiah, verse 10. It says, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever."
Right, and this is talking about the violence of Esau Edom, the so-called white man. You know, he calls himself white, but he's really red, as his blood shows forth through his skin. He is the wicked, according to Malachi 1 and 4, and the terror on this earth right now, because of our transgression, you know, it was given into his hands, according to Job 9 and 24. Okay, and it's saying his shame is going to cover him. All right, and what that means is everything that he has done, he can no longer hide. Okay, he's been exposed around the clock, you know, at the 365, 24 hours, 7 days a week, you know, nonstop. And, you know, the brother's videos, you know, going out all over the world, exposing this devil for who he is. Okay, and it said because of his wickedness on this earth, it says he will be cut off forever. Yes, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, is on the brink of extermination. Okay, once all these prophecies come to pass. All right, and we're right there. Okay, we know now that they've been messing with the Northern Kingdom as far as the deportation. Oh, and just read an article. I don't know if you guys saw this. You got bodies they've been led away on those planes in handcuffs and shackles, and now bodies are washing up in handcuffs and shackles. Okay, and just saw another article where they're starting to go after the Haitians. You know, most Haitians are brown skinned. How do they know who they are? You know, they really don't, because we all have, you know, similar features. So they're just going, you know, this Jacob's trouble is here, and it's about to ramp up. You know, we just had that 14th Amendment that's being tampered with, you know, but Jake has to realize that, you know, he is never a citizen of this country. But as I was saying, he's going to be exterminated according to the scriptures after he serves his punishment, you know, and be in slavery, twice as long and twice as hard as we were in it, but in righteousness. We won't be doing the ridiculous stuff that they were doing, like, you know, buck breaking, you know, cutting off the rods and stuff like that, chopping the heads off, you know.
Yep. Precept, just to make your point. Getting right to the point. Verse 18, Obadiah, verse 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken it.
That's pretty clear. But the thing is, the Lord says He's going to do it by our hand. You get that account in Ezekiel 25 verses 12 through 14.
Get it real quick.
Yeah, you want to grab that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ezekiel 25.
25.
Yep. 12 through 14.
This is Ezekiel chapter. Oh, I got it. This is Ezekiel chapter 25 and verse 12. It says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai Power, because that Edom hath dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and hath greatly offended, and revenged himself upon them." Verse 13, it says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai Power, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword."
So that Teman, you know, he's talking about the entire nation of Edom, you know, because they have revenged themselves against Judah, and what is that? That's because of the birthright, you know, the whole nation of Israel. He's mad about that birthright and trying to get it back. He's not going to be able to, you know, to have that eternal life. That's what he's trying to do with this MOTB, but that shit ain't gonna work. Okay, we already know that according to the scriptures, but he's going to try. He's trying to make himself as the Most High. Okay, and it's not going to happen. He is not the Most High. You know what does the scripture say? Can the axe boast against the one that handles him? All right, you know, can the clay say to the potter, "Why have thou made me thus?" You know, you don't have any control, Esau. The Lord has you in the trick bag. You know, ultimately up for that day of destruction. All right. What was that? That was all of it on that. You got 14 also.
It's verse 14. It says, "And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel."
See, it said by the hand of my people Israel. You know, because his Lord tells us to vengeance is His. But see, He's going to use us to do it. All right. Notice He talked about Judah at first, because Judah that's caught the most hell. That's your southern kingdom, also the tribe of Judah. But at the end, He says by the hand of His people Israel, which is what the brother just read in Obadiah 1 and 18. You know, he talked about the northern and southern kingdom, and it's the whole nation Israel. So yeah, they will be paid back for everything that they've done, twice as hard and twice as long. All right, they will be exterminated. All right, and there's no way around that. That's what the scriptures say. All right, you can call us the T to the errorists all you want to. That's what the scriptures say. You say you're a Christian country. Well, hey, now you gotta eat. You gonna eat those words.
You got more?
It says and they shall do in Edom according to mine anger, and according to my fury, and they shall know that my vengeance. So like it says, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai Power.
And they said they should do to Edom according to my anger. And that's again what you just read in Obadiah 1 and 18. All right, you know, round them up after they're done with that slavery and that punishment, you know, and put them in a pit, light them up.
All right, precept.
Go ahead.
Let's jump back to Obadiah verse 15. It says, "For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thy own head."
That's all the heathen. See, there's not a nation who did not, who is not guilty of putting their hands on us. You get that in First Maccabees 2 and 10. Somebody grab that right quick. Yeah, every nation has had a hand on us. Ham sold us to the Edomites. Okay, you had Ishmael, who was part of the sub-Saharan uh, slave trade, and you were automatically a eunuch under that slave trade if they didn't kill you. You know, something like that. Read that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 10. It says, "What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom, and God never spoils?"
God, what nation? That's all of them. You know, when you go through the history, everybody has put their hands on us. Everybody, and then some of them even assisted with each other. You know, even with the Babylonian captivity. You know, all those the Hamites, and also known as the Chaldeans in the book, Esau helped them. You know, burning down our temple, so on and so forth. You know, you had Moab helping the Assyrians. You know, so everybody has had has hand their hands on us, but no one has done us worse than Esau, Edom. You know, no other nation has been under the intense punishment like Israel. You get that account in Daniel chapter 9. All right, verses I think it's 9 through 14, somewhere around there.
Let's get it real quick.
Yeah,
Daniel, you said Daniel 9.
yeah, I believe it was Daniel 9.
It said 14.
9 through 14. Yeah.
Okay. We'll just get worse. We'll just straight to the point.
Yeah.
Let's see, Daniel 9, 9 through.
Maybe 12, where it says no other nation.
Yeah, number 12. Okay. We'll read 11. It says, "Yea, Daniel 9, verse 11. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of the Most High, because we have sinned against him. And he hath confirmed his words that he spake against us, and against his judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil."
And right there, he has confirmed his words. That's talking about the curses in Deuteronomy the 28, verses 15 through 68. You know, because we transgressed. All right, and then he said he got his judges too. So even the leaders who were teaching us weren't exempt from that punishment. You know, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, you know, it's at his discretion whether he wants to deal with the individual man or he wants to deal with the nation. You get that in Job 34 and 29, but you also see it in Joshua 7. You know, whereas Achan did, you know, I think he took those defiled items.
Yeah.
And that's the first time Israel got jacked up in a war on their way to the promised land. He jacked up the whole nation. You know, we lost that war but you know, he was judging the nation like that, but then eventually he wiped out Achan's whole lineage, you know, family and everything. All right, go ahead.
And to the point, to one of your points, Daniel is saying this. So Daniel, you know, of course everyone know the story. Mishael, Ananiah, and Azariah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were royalty.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the kingdom of Judah, and so they were under, you know, this captivity, you know, Babylonian captivity, and Daniel was saying this, so he's confirming that Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai word being true, you know, of course, and every man a liar, and so just like that which is then is now, the prophets of the Lord are under this kingdom, which is also a Babylonian. We always say that it's the Babylonian kingdom, Babylon, also known as America, ran by Esau, Edom. For it tells us in 2nd Esdras, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So, like the Lord said that He would scatter us into all nations, and He confirmed it. You know, just like Daniel, and I'm gonna finish this in Daniel, but it also told in Acts how that we would be in the utmost parts of the earth, preaching and teaching the word. So that had to also come to pass as well, to ensure that everything would come true. Like the Yahweh Shai said, not one jot, one tittle, you know, shall pass from the law until all, you know, be fulfilled. Roughly paraphrased. I might have we misquoted a little bit, but everything has to be fulfilled in the words of Yahweh, why Yahweh Shai. And again, it also tells us that he will not move nor stir, until the said measures be fulfilled, which is going into the prophecies as well. So we're going to go into this reading, but we just had to also kind of give understanding that we understand that these things in which we're reading, yet though it may anger us, but we know that this was because of our sins and transgressions. This is because the Lord said that we go into the curses and that his word has to be fulfilled. But pretty soon we're going to be on top, and we're going to receive that more than what our afflictions, that we've received in afflictions. He's going to bless us over and abundantly for what, things that we've gone through. We won't even remember this. This will be just like I said, for our light affliction.
Yep.
Okay, or but for a moment. And of course, the exceeding joy, for the kingdom, roughly paraphrasing. So the second part of this, Daniel chapter 9, verse 12, or the end, it says, let me read 12 again. He says, and he hath confirmed his word, which he spake against us and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven have not been done as have been done unto Jerusalem.
So yeah, nobody's had a worse fate. No other nation. And that's because, what's that? Amos 3, 1 and 2. He said, he was roughly paraphrasing, we are the only family that he has known, therefore he's going to punish us, for the stuff that we did when we transgressed. And yes, he has. Yes, he has. And to your point, Jerusalem had a whole lot to do with that, especially when it came to the Lord, because remember, they said, let his blood be upon our heads and our children's head. Man, what were you thinking when you said that? Because that surely did come to pass, man.
Let me read these next two.
Because
there's a really good point. It says, verse 13, it says, as it is written in the law of Moses, all this evil is come upon us, yet made we not our prayer before the Lord, our power, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth. So we understand that this is a truth, that we will be scattered, and we're coming into this understanding. Job had made a statement to his wife, when she told him to curse the Most High and die. And he said, you speak as a foolish woman. He said, shall we not receive good from the Most High, not evil? So he understood there's a truth that everything good and bad comes from the Most High.
Yep.
We read that. He said, I create light and darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Most High, do all these things. I, the Lord, do all these things. 14, he says, therefore have the Lord watched upon the evil, because we're going to read something. The Lord sees it. Okay, well, we're going to read and go into, he's watched all the things that's happened, and he's allowed for them to do this thing. We always bring that up in Thessalonians. He who will let until he be moved out of the way. All right, and it says, he watched upon the evil and brought it upon us, for the Lord our power is righteous for all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice. So this is the reason we're seeing these things happen upon our people. All right, and we still turn to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, and we make prayer and supplication unto him to look after us. Okay, yeah, I'm done.
All right. Okay, we'll get into this article. Once again, it's on the screen for you. We'll put a link to the article in the description box. All right, and it starts off on July 7th, 1893. A crowd of over 5,000 white people lynched a black man named Seay J. Miller in Bardwell, Kentucky, for allegedly killing 2 young white girls, despite ample evidence of his innocence. And here we go again. Always blaming Jake. Allegedly. There was never any concrete evidence. Okay. It says, many people were lynched across the South under accusation of murder. Many people were lynched across the South under the accusation of murder. During this era of racial terror, mere suggestions of black-on-white violence could provoke mob violence and lynching before the judicial system could or would act. The deep racial hostility permeating Southern society often served to focus suspicion on black communities after a crime was discovered. Whether or not there was evidence to support the suspicion and accusations lodged against black people were rarely subject to serious scrutiny. Here, suspicion immediately fell on Mr. Miller and led to his death despite available evidence pointing to a different culprit. Okay, so yeah, I was just watching that clip. What was that, Rosewood? When they hung, I forget the character Ving Rhames was playing.
Oh, I remember.
And he was sitting on this horse with a noose on his neck, and so the guy, the guy whose wife was allegedly SA'd by him, spit in his face, and he said, "Y'all know it wasn't no black man who did that."
Mm-hmm.
And then they told him shut up and called him a name. He said, "That's not my name." So Esau didn't care. They were going to close the case on anybody whenever they had the opportunity.
Right.
That's what he does, you know. All right. Goes on, back into the article. It says statements from Mr. Miller's wife and from law enforcement witnesses indicated that Mr. Miller was not even in Kentucky on the date the girls were killed, and multiple eyewitnesses identified the girls' killer as a white man. Just for same stuff all over again. That's just what happened in Rosewood. Okay. It says even the girl's father was unconvinced of Mr. Miller's guilt. Only one person implicated Mr. Miller, but he originally told police that the person he saw was a white man, as did the other witnesses. Wow. Somebody want to grab Exodus 23, verses 1 and 2?
1 and 2.
Yeah, because we right there right now.
This is Exodus chapter 23, starting at verse 1. It says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness."
Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what this original witness did. Even though the other ones were, they had it out for him anyway, just because he was a Jake. He wasn't even in Kentucky when it happened. But yet they found a reason to go after him. All right.
Verse 2, it says, "Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment."
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what that person did. He changed his story, to sway the judgment, even though that's what they were going to do anyway. That's what he did. So, yeah, man. Same playbook. All right, back into the article. It says the witnesses who implicated Mr. Miller changed his statement only after the county sheriff, threatened to charge him as an accomplice if he did not do so. Wow. Same thing. They wanted to get him for whatever reason. That was just his time to be judged. Messed up, but that's just where it was. It says this same sheriff handed Mr. Miller over to a crowd of thousands of white citizens to be lynched. Though charged with protecting the people in their custody, law enforcement almost never used their authority to resist white crowds intent on killing black people, and were instead often complicit in lynchings.
Read that one more time.
It says the same sheriff handed Mr. Miller over to a crowd of thousands of white citizens to be lynched. Though charged with protecting the people in their custody, law enforcement almost never used their authority to resist white crowds intent on killing black people.
Which goes into, oh, sorry, finish.
It says, and were instead often complicit in the lynchings.
What's that, complicit? Look at that, pull that word complicit.
Yeah, you got it.
I understand what he's saying.
Yeah. Yeah, he went along with it,
Yeah.
Just we'll get the dictionary version of it.
Reason I had you reread that is because we keep saying it was the same the same MO, the same thing, the same playbook.
Mm-hmm.
So previously, everything that we've read before, the government would get involved, and when they would get involved, or if there was the police, the sheriffs, they would somehow, the doors would get open to where they were able to come into the building and storm the White House, so to speak. Not the White House. What was it? What was the other building they stormed?
One of those courthouses.
Recently. I'm just saying, like with Trump.
Oh, what was it? Congress they stormed?
Yeah,
It was the White
yeah,
House.
sure. No, was it the White House? Where is it? They stormed
January 6th.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2021.
right.
Yeah.
So how they were
White
just
House.
able to just run in and storm the place, right? I said that jokingly, but no, but seriously, like it was. You see these stories where the man is in custody and supposed to have due justice, right, or due trial, a fair trial, but they take it in their own hands, and because we're in the hands of them, they have control as to what goes on, or at least the Lord allow them to have control,
Right.
and so they come in, and the doors are unlocked, gates are open or whatever, and they come in by the hundreds, pull them out, and they lynch.
Yeah. 5,000. That
Yeah.
word complicit.
He added.
Yeah.
Yep, it says
It's a lot.
involved with others in an illegal activity or wrongdoing.
Yep.
Yep. All right.
So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It says in a system where law enforcement did little to protect black communities, white crowds acted as judge, jury, and execution. All right. They took 5,000 of them for like one man. That just goes once again to prove the weakness and mediocrity of Esau Edom.
Well, you remember we did a story on a guy who, I think he bought the house or an apartment. You remember, and he like moved in, and they wanted him out, and so it was like thousands kind of showed up to his home.
That was Cicero, Illinois. We did
right? Yeah,
a few weeks ago. Yeah,
and then and so of course the police was got involved, but didn't do anything.
Precept.
Yep. Go ahead.
This is Ezekiel chapter 35 and verse 5. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, and the time of their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, said the Lord Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. You see, and perpetual goes into what? Everlasting hatred. And for it don't take 5,000 men just to kill one individual. So that's a blatant display of perpetual hatred, man. You see? But hey, man, these are the things that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has to pay for. All right, the title of the series being For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob. Hey, man, like we always going into, man. Hey, we just barely scratching the surface, man.
Yep.
It's a shit ton of wickedness and violence that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has done towards the children of Israel that he has to pay for, man. See? So the Lord says, since he ain't hated blood, blood gonna pursue him. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, all right, he's gonna reap what he sows.
And that scripture kind of segues right into this next paragraph. It says the mob was determined to ensure Mr. Miller's death was brutal, reasoning that immediate lynching by rope would be too humane. The mob fastened a chain weighing over 100 pounds around Mr. Miller's neck and forced him to walk through the town until he fainted from exhaustion. Man.
Well, what did they do to Yahushua?
Yeah. Carry that cross, whipped him as he was walking through, and that cross wasn't light.
Yeah, not saying that the guy was Yahushua, but I'm saying it's just that's the thought that came to mind.
Yeah.
He was in the time of the Romans when they were ruling, which were Edomites, and of course, in many of their Romans persecution, especially to so-called blacks, or the Christians, which were the Israelites, were very brutal.
Yeah.
What they did unto our people.
Yes, I'm your honor.
No,
And of course, we in that modern day Rome, which is why I make that mention.
All right. This back to the article. It says, I am standing here an innocent man among excited men who do not propose to let the law take its course. I have committed no crime to be deprived of my liberty or life. I am not guilty, Mr. Miller reportedly said as he was led to his death. Burning and torture here lasts but a little while, but if I die with a lie on my soul, I shall be tortured forever. I am innocent. These were his last words recorded. Wow.
Yeah, they gotta pay for that.
Yep. These stuff like it. These were his last recorded words. Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. They do, man.
Okay, any
This.
precepts?
Yeah. Now, no, let's go ahead.
Is there some more on the article?
Yes, more.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
I thought that was it. Okay.
No.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay. It says around 3 p.m., the heavily armed mob hanged Mr. Miller from a telephone pole, shot hundreds of bullets into his body, then left his corpse hanging from the pole for hours. Afterward, white people cut off his fingers, toes, and ears as souvenirs, and then burned Mr. Miller's body in a public fire. Wow. Wow.
You know, that goes back to that perpetual hatred, you know, which was brought out, you know, Ezekiel 30 in Ezekiel the 35th chapter. You know, Esau doing, you know, all those, you know, diabolical acts to our people. That all stems back to his hatred that he has for Jacob, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, cutting off, fingers, and this dude, hey, hey, he's got to pay for all that, man. And you know, everything that this man Esau Edom is doing, Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai is taking account to all of it, man, to every last detail.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. The eyes of the Lord are, was say 10,000
times brighter than the sun,
right?
Yep.
So, you know, he also, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good.
Mm-hmm.
And so every work, you know, that man has done, they're going to have to give an account in that day. And of course, you know, how, and I forgot, what year was that?
This was July 7th, 1893.
So those 1893, and many of those people, you know, could very well be back again, you know, here for their final judgment.
Yep.
And of course, you know, those of righteous minds understand what I'm saying. And so, and of course, then again, you know, when the kingdom comes, you know, they'll be back again to serve their punishment, you know, greatly.
Yep.
You know, like the brother brought out in the very beginning. And so there is a second part, you know, to this.
You know, Manifest Destiny definitely has a part too.
Right. I was thinking of Elder Malcolm when I was thinking about it, so kind.
Yep.
Yeah.
He always says that. All right. Back to the article. It says white people use racial terror lynching as a tool to instill fear in the broader black community. Well, and maybe, but from the records, you know, the things that we've covered, they still went and destroyed the rest of the community anyway. You know, after they had the alleged person that already got killed them, they still went through destroying the communities. We see that with Rosewood, you know, Black Wall Street, you know, Red Summer of 1919. All those things we've been covering, you know, for well over a year now. All right. He says lynchings were not merely retaliations for a specific crime. Rather, lynchings were meant to send a larger message to the entire black community of how quickly and easily they could be killed with no protection from authorities. That was 1893, and we're looking at the same thing right now, where this current dictator, Nero Trump, has you know, given the police, you know, qualified immunity. They won't be brought up on any charges for taking out people that are not Edomites. Okay, any charges. All right, no protection from the authorities. But Jake already knows this now. You know, we see that now. It's right within their own documents. You know, I was talking to two former law enforcement yesterday, and it's been, you know, their oath is to the Constitution and the first 10 amendments. The Constitution and the first 10 amendments. We were not declared citizens until the 14th Amendment. So we're excluded from that.
That's weak.
Excluded from all of that. You know, we say it over and over again. You know, that preamble says it's the last two sentences, to ourselves and our posterity. That Constitution and that preamble was penned in September of 1787. All right, Jake was slaves then.
Hey, Jake wasn't even considered a man.
Right.
Jake was considered three-fifths of a man.
Yep, 3/5 of a person, by which the Electoral College is rooted in that 3/5 compromise.
Yeah.
So if they don't like the way an election is turning out by the popular vote, the Electoral College will vote the other direction. And that's happened 5 times in U.S. history, twice in our lifetime.
Yeah.
With Bush and Gore, and then in 2016, Clinton and Trump.
And I believe, you could correct me if I'm wrong on it, but a lot of it was spanned because, of course, during that time, the Southerners, a lot of the Southern states had, they had the plantations,
Yeah.
and they had the slaves, so they had majority. They had a large population of slaves, which are, of course, our people that could vote. So then they had to try to find a way to offset.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're always scheming and crafty in their council and their unrighteous decrees, even amongst themselves. But it's always a way to try to get the upper hand.
Yep. That's where that term swing states come from. Florida, Georgia, all those southern states. Ohio is one of them, and you still figure they're just as rich. Mississippi. Hell, we just did a video. They just officially ratified the Constitution in 2013. That's just 12 years ago. And that thing passed in, I think, December 6, 1865. Yeah. All right. Let's back to the article. All right. It says, following Mr. Miller's brutal lynching, armed white residents began organizing to force black residents to leave the area. See, it's like I was saying, after they didn't took care of the guy, they go mess with the rest of the community. It says law enforcement arrested no one for participating in Mr. Miller's lynching and made no effort to investigate a white suspect in the girl's killings, but continued to indiscriminately arrest local black people on unfounded charges. That hasn't changed. You got to remember, today's police, to this very day, all right, this very day, June 29th, 2025, the modern day police is rooted in the slave patrol, okay? Which, by the way, when you start to put stuff together, the same badge that slave patrol had is the same badge that modern day police have, and that same badge is in the form of that star that the state of Israel uses, the 6-point star. And it's been learned that they train the police in America to do what they do. So it's all tied in together, all tied in together. All right. It says, within days, famed journalist and anti-lynching crusader Ida B. Wells traveled to Kentucky to investigate Mr. Miller's lynching. Her account, later published in the Chicago Inter-Ocean newspaper, detailed the brutality of the lynching and heartbreak of Mr. Miller's widow and the racism that allowed lynching in America to continue. All right, and this is an excerpt from that that publication. It says, "Thus perished another of the many victims of lynch law, but it is the honest, sober belief of many who witnessed the scene that an innocent man has been barbarously and shockingly put to death in the glare of the 19th century civilization by those who profess to believe in Christianity, law and order." See? Yeah. Believing in Christianity. And that's the thing. What's that? Psalms 50 and 16? They cast instruction behind them. Grab that Psalms chapter 50. verses 16 and 15.
You at the end of that article?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause I want to bring out something too.
Okay.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 50 and verse 16. It says, "But unto the wicked, Yahweh Shemashai saith, What hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth?"
Kind of. We know that wicked is the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, according to Malachi 1 and 4. You know, and they want to claim Christianity. When you go into the scriptures, you know, the Christianity or the Christians, that was a mocking term for the Israelites. Okay, you only see the word Christian 3 times in the scriptures, twice in Acts, once in 1 Peter. You know, in Acts it's 11 and 26, and then 26 and 28, and then 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 16, and each time is dealing with the Israelites. Okay, so they appropriated that term and ran away with it, created a whole religion out of it. Okay, when the scriptures have nothing to do with any other nation but Israel. We know that according to Psalms 147, 19 and 20.
Right. Esau so wicked in his court system, what they would swear by the Bible. But Esau, Edom, he sets up his own wicked laws. You know, his own unrighteous decrees.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't execute the righteousness contained in the scriptures.
Right. And when you're in that courtroom, you gotta watch. The same flag that you see in front of public buildings is not the same flag in that courtroom. Okay? That flag has the gold fringes around it.
Oh yeah.
Which means it's maritime law. So you're in a totally different system. Okay? So you gotta pay attention to that. Yeah. Just when you're driving around, look at the flags that's in front of the public buildings and the schools. They don't have the gold fringes on it. Now, even on the uniforms, a policeman's uniform, it's got that gold border. That's emblematic of the gold fringes. Yep. Okay. It says, these and similar deeds of violence are committed under the protection of the American flag. He's just talking about it, and mostly upon the descendants of the Negro race. Had Miller been ever so guilty under the laws, he was entitled to a fair trial. But there's absolutely no proof of his guilt. His widow says he left home in Springfield July 1st to hunt work. She had a letter from him July 5th, mailed at Cairo. When she heard from him next, he had been murdered. The poor woman seems to have lost her mind since her trouble, and during her first frenzy destroyed this letter, the only clue by which her husband could be traced. She seems incapable of answering questions intelligently and lives in a state of nervous excitement. Yeah, you know, they killed her husband, you know, brutally. You know, couldn't even they cut his body parts off. You know, couldn't even, you know, and that's another thing Esau did. After they killed, you know, you're not supposed to touch the corpse. That's another law they broke. You know, and we know in the book of Tobit, you know, those bodies supposed to be buried, man. That's the law. Don't be leaving them out there. And that's what kind of like got him in trouble. He was going around giving the bodies a proper burial, you know. It says, how long shall it be said of free America that a man shall not be given time nor opportunity to prove his innocence of crimes charged against him? All right. Yeah. That concludes that, but man.
Jump up real quick. You said like they did a fire, right? They set them on fire.
Yeah, they burned them.
Okay, so
you want that part again?
Yeah, just read that if you could, just briefly.
Yeah, this was a short section
too.
It says around 3 p.m. the heavily armed mob hanged Mr. Miller from a telephone pole, shot hundreds of bullets into his body, and then left his corpse hanging from the pole for hours. Afterward, white people cut off his fingers, toes, and ears as souvenirs, and then burned Mr. Miller's body in a public fire.
In a public fire. Yep. Okay, so something came to my mind, and I've come across it before, but I actually did a chat GPT, and I said bonfire, origin and worship. Okay, and I'm not gonna go into the depths of the worship part of it, but the bonfire says the word bonfire comes from the mid English. It's like bane fire, which means a fire of bones. This is an early usage. Bone fire were literally fires made to burn bones, either in a part of of sacrifices or a dispose of remains after ritual or war. And so then it went into some different cultures that did it. But then I asked another question. I says, how does this relate to black people, okay, so called, being lynched? And then it says the connection between bonfires and lynching of black people, especially in the United States, is a dark and painful chapter in history. While bonfires traditionally symbolize purification, community, and worship in ancient cultures, in this text, fire was weaponized as a tool of torture, racism, and dehumanization. And it says lynching and the use of fire during the 1900s and the early 20th century, particularly from the Reconstruction era through the Jim Crow era, thousands of black Americans were lynched across the U.S., often with horrific public spectacle. Fire was frequently part of this fact. Burning bodies, it says victims were sometimes burned alive, or their bodies were set on fire after death.
Yeah.
This wasn't just murder. It was intended to humiliate, torture, and send a message of white supremacy.
Wow.
Crowd gatherings. These lynchings often resemble ritualistic and carnival-like events with large white crowds, including families gathering around the victim, sometimes around fires. It says creating a grotesque parallel to old communal or ritual bonfires. Photographs and postcards, people took and circulated photos of these lynchings, treating them as souvenirs, sometimes with the victim's body still smoldering.
Yeah, you get a lot of those photos. There's a book called Without Sanctuary that documents, those photographs and shows them in great detail, and how they were used as postcards, so on and so forth. And there's another book called, there's no photographs in that one, if I recall. It's called 100 Years of Lynching, which is documented articles on what they did. So yeah, Esau, he's got a lot to pay for. Yep. A whole lot to pay for,
Which goes back to where it says, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee. Yep. So now we're finding it's nothing we did. Mm-hmm. They went back and tracked and took pictures and articles and different things of what they did, because they never thought that the men of the Lord would eventually, that the Israelites would eventually rise up.
Yep.
And we would be smart enough or intelligent enough, again, through the spirit of Yahweh Shemel Shai, to come across this information and start to bring it to life as to how it relates to the scriptures. All right, and this is why the judgment is going to come down so gruesomely upon Esau Edom, so-called white man.
Yep.
All right.
Sure
Any last scripture? Anything else?
Yep. You got anything? You?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Right. So with that, we hope that this lesson was edifying, uplifting, exhorting of some sort, alarming to the elect body of true believers of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. Before we end, we'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the globe. Until next time, all those listening and learning to you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.